Welcome to Fantasy Fanline.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another week of Fantasy Fanline. We are the only fantasy football call-in show putting you on the air with industry experts every week. I'm your host, Greg Scalera, and we'll be featuring different guests from around the fantasy football industry every week to take your calls and answer your questions live on the air. So give us a call, you know the drill, 618-FANLINE, we'll have that number up on the screen, and you can call anytime during the show to talk some fantasy football with us. We're live right now and every Saturday for the rest of the season, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or Twitch. Pick your favorite platform, subscribe to us, hit the bell so that you always know when we're on the air. Every episode is also available in audio format the next day, wherever you find your podcasts. You can follow us on every platform at Fantasy Fanline and visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, for a full schedule of our upcoming guests. And you can also submit a question there to our mailbag if you can't join us live. We're a brand new independent show. We will be relying on your support to help us grow. So if you like what you hear today, leave us a review, tell a friend to tune in. You can also support us at patreon.com/fantasyfanline, and you can contribute for as little as $1 a month to earn exclusive perks like live shoutouts, priority calling codes, and access to our listener league. And I am thrilled to introduce today's guest. We have Brandon Ghabbour with us from Deep Dive Fantasy Football Podcast. Brandon, I'm going to bring you in. What's going on, man? How are you?
Good, man. How are you? I'm excited to be on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Dude, I am thrilled. I just got back from a week of vacation. We were in Punta Cana, my wife and I, and the Wi-Fi is not great out there. So I was getting like bits and pieces of news coming in. I was kind of seeing things going on. There was a lot happening in the world, in football, in the Marvel Universe. I saw the Spider-Man trailer. Dude, what a week. I'm excited to have you here to kind of help me put all the news in context, because I really haven't gotten to catch up much. So we'll go through it today. We'll talk about your thoughts on it. But first, tell us about your show, man.
All right. So I run Deep Dive Fantasy Football. I have a podcast, website, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. But most of my content is through the podcast, and it's kind of like combined with a draft sheet that I make for everybody. It's free. So anyone that's listening, if you guys want to check it out, it's like right in my link on everything, on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. But what I've been doing most of the off season, I try to do something a little bit different from other podcasts. I've been breaking down every single team and how I do my analysis and my projections to get my ranking for the players on that team. So I actually just finished that up about, I would say 2 weeks ago. And since then I've been doing your standard like mock draft episodes, sleepers, tiers, rankings, all that stuff to kind of bring it all together. But yeah, if you guys are looking for a new podcast to add into your rotation, check out Deep Dive Fantasy Football. It's probably available on whatever you listen to.
It is a great show. One of my favorite kind of up-and-coming analytical-based shows. And something I love about your show, really, and I don't think I've told you this, is that you have a lot of I guess, differences in rankings. It's very non-chalk, but they don't feel like hot takes because you make them make sense. Like you lay it out, and I'm like, what? And then you explain it, and I'm like, I am on board with that. Like I completely subscribe. And people might hear some things from you that are surprising today if they're not kind of tuned into your show, if they're kind of more in line with consensus rankings. But you have the facts to back it up, man. And that's something I love about you as an analyst.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's funny that you say that, actually, because on Twitter, whenever if I say something that I have ranked without my context, everyone goes after me. It's pretty funny. Like everyone's like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. But then like, as I start commenting, like, cause I try to comment back to everybody. As I start commenting, they're like, oh man, I don't know. And then like the responses start dying out. They don't hit me back after my comments. I'm like, all right, see,
well,
I had a reason.
How long you been doing your show now? A couple of years?
Yeah. So I've been consistent with the podcast for 2 years. I think I'm up to like 160 total episodes now. So yeah, about 2 years.
I would think that the longer people stick with you and hear you out on things, the more they'll come to trust you without making you break down everything. I am getting there myself. I've, adjusted my own thoughts on some players just because I feel like I was so far off from where you had them that I was like, okay, he must be seeing something that I'm missing. I'm not an analytics guy. I am the man of the people. I am here to kind of connect, the callers with the experts who have done the homework and done the digging that we don't all have time to do. So let's get into it, man. Let's look at some news that we missed throughout the week, put some things in context. We will start with Teddy Bridgewater, the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos, according to the team's official Twitter account. What does it all mean, Brandon? What does it mean for Teddy? What does it mean for his weapons?
So for Teddy, I wouldn't even get into it, really. I don't think Teddy is worth rostering unless you're in a super deep, super flex league, like I'm talking 14 team, or if you just completely punt quarterback. I mean, he is a quarterback, so he could be useful if you completely punt the position, but I wouldn't be really looking to roster him too much. He's got good weapons, and people might be turned on by that, but he's also got a super good defense and a super strong run game. And I think those things are going to very much cap his ceiling and also lower his floor. So, and he's not a rushing quarterback either, so you don't have that factor. But for Jerry Jeudy, that's who I'm excited about, because I actually have not adjusted, because it's pretty recent news, right? I haven't adjusted the entire team yet based off of the Teddy Bridgewater starting over Drew Lock news. But pulling up my wide receiver rankings right now, I currently have Jerry Jeudy ranked as my wide receiver 29, 28. So that seems a little bit low. But like you said, it's because I have a lot of guys that everyone else is low on, a little bit higher. But I would be moving Jerry Jeudy up with the Teddy Bridgewater news, because Jerry Jeudy is the most risk-averse wide receiver on that team. Courtland Sutton, you kind of got to give him a 50-50 ball. You've got to be accurate enough to give him a shot. Jerry Jeudy is wide open. He creates the most separation. That was his big calling card coming into the draft. Jerry Jeudy is somebody that is going to make it easy for the quarterback, and Teddy Bridgewater is going to love him. He's not going to push the ball too deep downfield to KJ Hamler on a 9 route or Courtland Sutton on 50-50 balls. He's going to throw it to the wide open guy in Jerry Jeudy. And a lot of people might be worried about his hands. We've seen so many people come in with hand problems. Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Terrell Owens. It's a non-ending list, right? So, or never-ending list. So Jerry Jeudy, I'm not worried about that. Also, he was catching balls from Tua, who threw left-handed and never had a rocket arm. So it was definitely an adjustment to Drew Lock last year. So I think there's a bunch of factors, right? I think Jerry Jeudy's going to be great. He's going to definitely be the number one target in that offense. And I think it's probably going to be by a decent margin. So Jerry Jeudy, I'm moving up. Courtland Sutton, I'm moving down. Noah Fant, I moved down. And maybe you could look at the running backs a little bit better with some more receiving upside, because Teddy Bridgewater would be more likely to dump it down than Drew Lock. But that's basically how I'm changing things for the Broncos.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Teddy vultures a few goal line rushing touchdowns. He had, I think, 5 of them, 5 or 6 last year. Other than that, I think he's a better pure passer than Drew Lock. Drew Lock was looking good in the preseason, though. He had some good vibes coming out of training camp and kind of the preseason games, but not an earth-shaking difference, I think, from Drew Lock to Teddy in terms of talent. They passed on Justin Fields in the draft. It is
horrible
what it
decision.
Is.
Yeah, that was horrible.
There were a few head scratchers like that this year in terms of, taking position players and other pieces. Broncos, I always felt like we're a quarterback away.
Absolutely.
I think they're still a quarterback away, but he's as far as, like you said, drafting Teddy himself, he's a quarterback and he's alive. So that is half the battle. If you really want to reach in a 2 QB league, I would probably stay away. I don't think he really has the upside to be a passer, but weapons will be okay, and I think they would have been okay with Drew Lock. I like your take on bumping Jeudy. I think he's the better pure talent as far as receiving options go.
Yep.
Any last thoughts on that before we move on?
Only just to piggyback off what you said, they're a quarterback away. I can't believe that they passed on Fields. I was so confident once Fields was there on the board that they were going to take him. I don't understand the thought process. I really don't. And even the fact that they're moving to Teddy, it is what it is. Drew Lock's not great either, but at least Drew Lock has some semblance of upside. And he's only started for them 18 or 20 NFL games total. That's barely more than one season. And they're already writing him off, but they're willing to give Teddy Bridgewater the keys as if he's going to do much more when he's had way more time to do something in the league. So I don't really agree with the decision, but I guess they're settling for mediocrity, and they're going to have a middling pick next year too.
Yeah, we've seen Teddy. We know what he is. I don't agree with it either, but maybe they'll give us a call for that head coaching job in a couple of years after they're mediocre next year. As much as I love Vic Fangio, but yeah, after they passed on him in the draft, I was like, he's coming to Chicago, baby. Fields is coming to Chicago. That was when I knew. That was the moment. Let's look at the next piece of news here. Patriots running back Sony Michel traded to the LA Rams in exchange for 2 conditional late-round picks. Does this matter for Damian Harris, James White, Ramondre Stevenson? I know you're a big Ramondre guy.
Yeah.
And on the other side, Henderson on the Rams. What's it looking like?
So I think it kind of confirms. We'll start with the Rams. I think it kind of confirms that the worry that a lot of people had about Darrell Henderson, that there's no way he's going to be the only guy when it's said and done going into the season. They're going to have to make a move. Maybe a lot of people speculated if David Johnson gets cut, they might pick him up. Maybe they'll go after a veteran running back who's on waivers still or something of that manner. But obviously that worry proved to be true. And I think it's pretty clear that Darrell Henderson is not going to be somebody that has huge upside anymore. A lot of people were excited for it, but I didn't see it in the first place. Now it's very hard to make the case that exists. You've got Stafford, who's miles ahead of Jared Goff. I mean, Stafford was way more efficient than Jared Goff was, and Stafford was in the worst situation coming off injury with Kenny Golladay hurt most of the season, Marvin Jones banged up, and just as bad of an offensive line than Goff was with his amazing weapons and amazing coaching staff. So with such an upgrade at quarterback, it's going to be a huge pass-heavy team, in my opinion, and they're not really going to lean on the run game that much. Also, the Rams always were run heavy in the red zone, and I think that was more due to Goff's limitations than Sean McVay's preferences. And I think now that he has Stafford, he's super excited to let it rip in the red zone instead of just trying to run it down the other team's throat. So you're losing rushing total like volume upside. You're losing touchdown upside, and now Sony Michel's there. So it's very hard for me to see Henderson being more than like a maybe at most top 15 running back, but he's a decent value. And then going to the Patriots, I think Ramondre Stevenson's a very good late shot. If you go 0 RB, which I never condone, ever, I will never do that in my entire life. I've tried it. It's not, look, to each his own, but for me, it's not worth it.
I feel like especially this year, like that is just not.
Oh yeah.
That's not where the value is in drafts, and then we can maybe get into that later. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, for sure, I agree with that. So yeah, Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, he's a good late round flyer. If something happened to Damian Harris, he would be great. I would love Ramondre. It's kind of hard to see him being like anything more than like a super deep flex play, in the fact that, Damian Harris is probably going to be the closest thing to a true RB1 they've had in a really long time. But if Mac Jones really is the starter, which is a whole nother conversation, but if he really is the starter, then that would be better because you're getting more rushing attempts to the running back position, not as a whole, as a team. They'll probably run less, but to the running backs, because Cam Newton's not taking 8 to 10 carries a game, they'll have more volume and they'll have a better opportunity at touchdowns because Cam won't vulture them. So he's definitely worth a late shot. And Damian Harris is probably a locked in like RB 18 to like 24 range for me.
What is his upside, you think, if Mac Jones starts Damian Harris? And this is probably a good segue into kind of talking about the recent vibes out of New England with Cam Newton, kind of with his COVID protocol misunderstanding. I don't know if that's been more clear here in America than it was to me out of the country in Punta Cana. Kind of vague information coming in, but
super vague.
Okay, so I wasn't missing anything. Nobody here knows what happened either. Okay,
no.
All right, what's going on, man? Make it make sense for us.
Okay, so you're talking about the quarterback situation? I don't know what to tell you.
The quarterback situation, but also what does it mean for the weapons? Who should we kind of be pulling for in New England if we're interested in drafting their running backs? If we're interested in any of the receiving options, the tight ends maybe?
Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in drafting anybody in New England outside of Cam Newton himself, you definitely want Mac Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty clear. Cam Newton takes touchdowns away from everybody. He runs the clock out quicker. The offense will have less total plays, and he's just not somebody who's a super accurate passer. Now he's not bad by any means. He actually looked a lot better this year, and I believe his statement that his shoulder is finally healthy for the first time in like 3 years, because he looks different when he throws the ball, at least from what I've seen this year so far, both in training camp and in the preseason. But Mac Jones makes everybody, for fantasy purposes, better. The only person that loses out on Mac Jones starting is the quarterback position in New England. Because if Cam was the starter, and I had it ranked this way, I just had to move it. But Cam Newton was ranked as my quarterback 13. Any season he's played a whole season, he's always a top 5 quarterback. Anytime by points per game that he's played in general, he's always been a top 12 quarterback, I think, except last year. And that was after COVID and having the worst weapons he's ever had in his entire career, and a whole bunch of stuff that happened.
Welcome to New England.
Yeah. So So Cam Newton was somebody I loved, and if for some reason he does end up being the starter again, and they work things over, smooth things over, then I would be all in on Cam Newton as like a late round quarterback target. Mac Jones I wouldn't draft, but I think the number one wide receiver probably is. It's a tough question. It's probably going to be Aguilar or Myers. If you want to take a shot there, I would. But I think the more interesting picks with Mac Jones would be Damian Harris, James White, super late in PPR. I think a lot of people forgot about him because of the Cam Newton effect last year, and the tight ends, particularly Jonnu Smith, because if him and Hunter Henry got a similar target share, Jonnu would do more with it. He's more of a rat guy.
Do you? I think there's a little bit of a feeling around James White in New England that he was more of a product of Tom Brady liking to dump off short to the running backs. Do you think it's more of a product of the system? Is it Belichick's offense? If Mac Jones comes in, do you think we'll see him kind of hyper targeted in the short game like we saw when Brady was in town?
I think it's a good mixture of both. I think people try to find like one specific reason far too often to explain something in football because it makes it easier. It makes it easier to project if you can blame everything on one like reason. But I think it was a little bit of everything. Mac Jones is also going to be a similar guy to Tom Brady. He's not very mobile. He will just move within the pocket, take what the defense is giving to him. So I think he's going to check it down a lot. Also, Tom Brady, a big reason he probably did utilize the running back position was outside of the one white receiver that they always had, whether it was Welker or Edelman or Amendola and Gronk. That was pretty much their only legitimate weapons, unless you're going back all the way to Randy Moss. But obviously,
that doesn't count. That's a different life.
Exactly. So it made sense for him to utilize the running backs. And as much as you might look at the contracts given to Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne and all these guys that they brought in and the tight ends, none of those guys are true, like, crazy difference makers. So I still think the running back position will be involved a lot in the receiving game.
Cool. Any interest in the tight ends? If Cam Newton gets the start, he did have some success in Carolina with Greg Olsen. Yeah, they're not Greg Olsen, and I think that was a different Cam Newton, different system. But I've heard that argument come up.
Yeah, and Greg Olsen too. He was the main weapon for the Carolina Panthers. I mean, obviously that's not going to be the case. Jonnu or Hunter Henry are not going to just dominate for the Patriots. So.
Yeah, when you say the worst weapons Cam Newton has ever had right now, in fairness, he's never had, an embarrassment of riches anywhere he's played. But
definitely not.
I think New England takes the cake. All right, let's move on. We are going to Ian Rappaport, now reporting that the Jaguars have placed rookie running back Travis Etienne on IR, officially ending his season. It is a bummer. What does it mean for James Robinson? Is he going to be the workhorse there again? Will they sign anybody else? Speaking of great player, terrible draft pick situationally, let's talk Jaguars running backs.
So it's funny because I actually just took James Robinson in my mock draft episode, and right now he's still a good value, but it's not going to be for long because once people start catching up, ADP starts catching up to, hey, Travis Etienne's not there, James Robinson is probably just as good as last year. I think it's a dangerous situation because it's very easy to say, okay, they have Trevor Lawrence now. Laviska Shenault's going to be better. They have Marvin Jones now. The offense as a whole should be better. So if James Robinson was the main dude there last year, and he wasn't he like RB4 or something last year?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So if he was
ton of carries.
Exactly. If he was like a top 8 running back last year, and their offense is better this year, and now Etienne's out the picture, he should be able to repeat. I do not agree with that at all. And I think the biggest difference is going to be the fact that he was one of the most dominant running backs in terms of target share among the position on his team and carry share. The most carry to another running back on that team last year, I think it was like 30 or like 25 carries to the second running back. That's super rare. You never see that. Carlos Hyde is probably going to take at least 80 carries on the season. It's going to be annoying, but it's true. And now Trevor Lawrence is more likely to run than Gardner Minshew. He's going to take away some touchdowns. He's going to take away some total rushing volume. So I don't think James Robinson is going to dominate the same way, especially it doesn't seem like that's what Urban Meyer wants to do. A change in coaching, you have to look at what that might mean for how the offense looks differently. So I do like James Robinson right now. I actually did adjust since the Travis Etienne news already. James Robinson is my running back 19. And that sounds really low, but we do have a good amount of running backs this year in fantasy to pick from. So he's actually right behind David Montgomery, Chris Carson, J.K. Dobbins for me, right in front of Miles Sanders, Myles Gaskin. So he's with a good group of names. It's just the number sounds a little low.
I like to keep kind of ADP notes on players that we're talking about. I didn't even bother writing his down because I think it's going to look very different by the time people actually start drafting. But
definitely.
I'm gonna stop us for a second here. We do have our first call of the episode coming in, so I'm going to take the call. We'll see who we got, see what they want to talk about. Caller, if you're on the line, you are on Fantasy Fanline. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's up? This is Sanji Value calling from New Jersey.
What's going on, Sanji
Love
Value?
the show.
Welcome back.
What's up?
Yeah. You know I'd be back, man. You knew I'd be back. Love this. Just have a quick question, and I feel like I'm alone on this one. I feel like Saquon's getting disrespected in the fantasy community. I think all these experts are saying avoid him. He's going to be a bust just to, save their own butts here because of the surgery and the quote unquote, poor offense, it's going to be a completely different offense this year. And, I feel like this is the guy who could compete for those CMC numbers. And I see him going 12 overall. And I just feel like he's being disrespected. It kind of reminds me of like when Peterson had that crazy surgery and a lot of these so-called experts were avoiding him. And then, he kind of made them eat their words there. The guy's talented, probably one of the best running backs in the league as far as talent, if not
Definitely.
the best. And I just want to hear your opinion on this one.
Well, before I hand it over to Brandon, my usual response to people using AP as an example of people coming back from injuries is that not a lot of people are AP, but if you had to pick one, Barkley's probably the one. So, Brandon, what do you think, man?
So I kind of fall in the middle. I understand why people are hesitant on him, but I'm definitely not too hesitant on him at all. So the way I break down my rankings puts Saquon Barkley at running back 5 for me. He, in terms of like total projected points, he's my running back 4, but I would have Ezekiel Elliott one spot above him. Just, I think he's a little bit safer, but actually with the Dak news, you could easily make the argument that he's not. But Saquon for me is in tier 2 of running backs. That's everybody outside of Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is his own tier. So if you wanted to take Saquon at 2 overall, I have no argument for you. I think there's a wide range of outcomes though, because with the recent injuries, it's possible, and the love apparently that the Giants have for Devontae Booker, it's very possible that instead of Saquon dominating the share, like for example what you brought up, a Christian McCaffrey, it's possible he gets 75% of the work all the way around. It's possible he gets 90% of the work all the way around. So there's a wide range of outcomes in that sense. Also, the fact that he has been a really good receiver, but he's also never had Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, all of these guys to compete with for targets. So I still think his target share is going to be fine. I have him at 83 targets, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got like maybe 65 or 70. So overall, I do think he is being disrespected. I would never let him fall to 12. I don't think he should fall past probably the latest I could see him falling would be 8. And that's because I have 6 running backs in the same tier as him, and then I would slide Kelsey in. I would take him before any wide receiver, and I would take him over most running backs. So yeah, I like Saquon. I do agree with you. He is being a little bit disrespected for sure.
Glad we agree. The guy's a genetic freak, and you don't take a running back at 2 overall to give Devontae Booker a bunch of carries. I'm sure, they're a little concerned with the injury, but, Saquon's different to me. Like, I feel like he's worth a spot at 5. I feel like at 5,
sure.
he could be a league winner at the 5 spot. So maybe that's a little bias on my end as a Giants fan, but I've seen this guy when he's fully healthy, and I don't think he's ever. The box can't stack the box on him like they did in previous years. This year, it's a make or break year for Daniel Jones, playing for his job. So I think they're going to use him. That's just my opinion, and I'm glad you agree with me that he's getting disrespected by these experts.
Yeah,
I think it depends on your risk tolerance in that area of the first round, kind of the 3, 4, 5, 6, because there's not a lot of running backs even in that first round with the potential to be the number 1 overall.
Definitely.
I think Barkley has that ceiling. And Sansa, I'm glad you're on the line with Brandon specifically this week, because you called in to our last show to talk a little bit about who you might be thinking of taking at that kind of 103, 104, 105 spot. And I know Brandon has a kind of an unconventional, strong opinion about Kelsey in kind of those top 3 picks. Do you want to make a case for Kelsey in the top half of the first round?
Sure. So I'll take it all the way, and I'll make the case for Kelsey at 2. That sounds like a good article title, Case for Kelsey. Anyways,
duly noted.
So there's something that I have in my draft sheets. It's called VORP. And it's very similar. I don't remember what the fantasy industry calls it, but it's very similar to something else that exists. but I have my own equation. So VORP is value over replacement player. So basically, the way I look at fantasy, and it helps you make decisions like across positions. So like if you're looking in like the third round and you're like, okay, this guy could be my RB2 or this guy could be my wide receiver 2, and you don't know who to take, that's when you look at VORP. And so basically what that tells you is in that projected spot on your roster. So if we're talking about Travis Kelce in the projected tight end spot, how many points per week? Okay, so it's an average. How many points per week are you going to get more than your opponent? It's based off my projections, but you could also base it off historical data. They're both actually going to be pretty similar. So Travis Kelce is obviously my tight end 1, and he has the second highest value over replacement of any player in my rankings across any position. So on average, Travis Kelce should get you 6.5 points more than your opponent's tight end. That is more than any gap at any position other than Christian McCaffrey. It's actually higher than Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey's averaged 30 points per game, which is absolutely ridiculous over the last 19 games. So the last 2 seasons, because obviously he didn't play much last year. And he's been absolutely ridiculous. He outscores everybody, yet Kelce gives you more value than Christian McCaffrey. The only reason I would take Christian McCaffrey over Kelce, actually 2, is maybe there's a possible worry about Kelce with his age. I don't think that that's something to be worried about. But also because if you take McCaffrey at 1, you could get Darren Waller at the back of the second, who is my third best value over replacement player with an advantage of 4 points per week. But basically that's what it's built around, because when you look at your running backs like a Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, there's a lot of those names. There's a lot of those names in that area. And most of those guys are going to be spread out across multiple teams. So when you're drafting one of them, they're going to be very valuable to you, but they're not going to be nearly as valuable as tight end, because there are going to be plenty of people with a good running back right there in that spot. Nobody has a tight end anywhere close to Kelce. Kelce's points per game last year, I have it, so I'll just look at it real quick. 20.8 points per game last year for Travis Kelce. Darren Waller was the tight end 2 at 17.5. Kittle was tight end 3 at 15.5. That's already a 5-point drop from 2 players. And then after Kittle, it's a shit show. Like it's 10 points per game for like the best tight ends after that. So Travis Kelce is absolutely worth pick 2 or 3 overall if you want to take him there. If you want to be ballsy, because he's going to give you the best advantage in fantasy.
Now, an important piece of context, I don't think you have to take him at 103. If you
definitely not.
Sanj, I know your question last week was kind of related to choosing the best spot in the first round to draft from, if you have that luxury, if you guys are picking. Brandon's a 101 guy this year, but if you're targeting Kelce, you don't have to go 103. You could probably push back a little bit later.
Yeah, 108.
Yeah, he's going right now. He's at 109 is his ADP per fantasy football calculator. So, Sanj, your thoughts on Kelce in the top 3?
Oh, man, I don't know if I have the guts for all that. I don't know if I could take Kelce over one of those backs, but you know what they say.
That's why he's
Barkley,
109.
Scared money don't make money, and go get your guys. ADP is just a guide for me. I don't really draft off of it. I just get a feeling for where guys should be going. So if you think Kelce's going to be that much of an advantage, which over the years he has been, especially in 10-man leagues, go grab him. But as far as taking him over like Kamara, Barkley, or Zeke, I don't know if I have the guts to do that. But it could pay off. He's safe. He's on one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. Mahomes loves him. You want that advantage every week? Go get it.
Speaking to that CMC advantage, we had a stat come up on our last show, Brandon. CMC, the last time he played a full healthy season, 2019, if you split his total fantasy points in half at the end of the year, he still would have been 2 top 12 running backs, which is just seems impossible.
Yeah, he's insane.
The guy is unbelievable. He's
Sanj,
unbelievable.
Do you have a few minutes, man? Are you at work? You busy? Do you want to hang with us for a little bit? We do have a game coming up that you can play with us if you'd like.
I'm working, but I got a few minutes left in me.
All right, man. Let's move into a segment that I like to call Roto Olympics. We played this last time. Brandon, I did not prep you on this.
Not at all.
Something I like to do for fun with our callers if we happen to have somebody on the line when we're ready to play it. I said last time I was going to build a drop for it. I did not have time because I was in Punta Cana. Maybe the drop every episode will just be me saying that I need to build a drop for it. And that's how I introduced the segment. But we're gonna play a little fantasy football volleyball this week. We're gonna do 3 rounds, and what's gonna happen is I'm gonna name a category. I'm gonna name a category. for each round, and you guys are going to go back and forth and see if you can name a player who fits into that category. First one to drop the volley loses the point on that round. Any questions?
Interesting. This sounds fun.
Yeah, it is fun, man. Whoever ends up with the most points today gets the gold medal in Road Olympics for the day. So we are going to start our first category, and I'm going to give, by the way, no Googling allowed, Sanj. I can't see you. I can see Brandon. I know he's not cheating. All right.
Scout's honor.
We're going to give our guest Brandon the first volley on the first category, which is running backs with 200-plus rushing attempts in 2020. So running backs who carried the ball more than 200 times last year. What do you got, Brandon?
Derrick Henry.
That is the first one. He was first with 378 carries, which is ridiculous.
That's not fair. That's an easy one.
That's okay, man. I gave you the low-hanging fruit because you're our honored guest for the day. Sanch, who you got?
Oh, man.
Top of your head. Who carried the ball a ton? Who was our workhorse?
Who? I'm not sure. I don't remember if Kamara got hurt in last year. I think Jonathan Taylor, he get over 200 carries?
Yes, he did. He had 232. He was number 8 on the list. I will tell you guys that there were 10 in total. So Derrick Henry was number 1. Yeah. Taylor was number 8. So you got 8 more options on the board. Brandon, what do you got, man?
James Robinson.
James Robinson, number 6, 240 carries. He now has the backfield to himself, as we discussed, for the most part, after the ETN injury. We'll see if he gets a workload like that again. He succeeded on volume last year, not so much efficiency on a bad offense. But Sanch, ball's back on your side of the net.
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones was the very last one on that list. 201. You just got over that threshold, dude. All right, Brandon.
Oh, man. I know he missed a lot of games. I don't know if I want to say this person. I'm going to go with the safer one first. I'm going to say Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs, number 3 on the list. 273 carries. That's a big one. Sanch. It's getting thin.
I might as well go Alvin Kamara, right?
Alvin Kamara not on the list, but that was one that I was surprised didn't make it. I don't have his number pulled up, but first point goes to Brandon. Yo, good job, guys. You got more of those than I probably would have off the top of my head. The other ones on the list that we didn't get. David Montgomery was number 4 on the list, surprisingly.
Yeah,
247 carries. He's going, just for context, he was number 4 on the carry list. He's going in the 3rd round at RB 17 right now on an improved offense. Speaking as a Homer fan, I am a Bears fan. I think he's being undervalued. We can get into that later, maybe. Brandon, I know you kind of think of him as a stronger RB2 this year. We'll see. Josh Jacobs, Dalvin Cook was 2 on the list, over 300 carries. He had 312.
How did we not pick Cook? That's my boy.
Funny.
I think that you don't think of Dalvin Cook as like a carry workhorse. You think of him as a high.
I do though. He just slipped my mind. I don't know why.
Well, he's a high total touch guy. A lot of people think of him as more of like a receiving back, but no, man, he was a workhorse. Other ones that we missed were Kenyon Drake on that list. Hard to remember because he changed teams. But he had 239 carries, and Chase Edmonds is now projected to be the lead back in Arizona. He's going RB 27. He's got James Conner behind him. I guess people are worried about that workload, but I feel like James Conner is less of a threat to Chase Edmonds than Edmonds was to Kenyon Drake last year, personally. Just a bit of context, food for thought.
I feel like Kyler Murray is the RB1 in Arizona, but that's just me.
Well, he was last year too, and Drake still had 239 carries, so we'll see. And the only other one was Melvin Gordon, kind of a tricky one.
Ooh, yeah.
He was number 9 with 215. So round 2, Sanj gets the first volley. We are looking at wide receivers with 17 or more red zone targets in 2020.
Ooh.
And keep in mind, I try to pick these categories
17?
because there's 17 or more. I pick these categories because there are always a couple of surprising names on the list that I want to highlight. But there are another 10 on this list. So Sanch, who do you got first? Red zone targets.
I could go with the easy one here that we're all thinking, but I'll go Mike Evans.
Oh, that's a good one. He's actually number 5 on the list. He had 19 targets, 5th most.
Ooh.
All right, Brandon.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah, he was really the low-hanging fruit that I was thinking of. He had 28, which is ridiculous. He was by far number 1 on that list. Sanch, back in your court.
Oh, man. Red zone targets for receivers.
Yep, not receptions, just targets.
man, I want to say Diggs, but I also know Gabe Davis got a bunch of red zone targets last year. But I'll say Diggs, the season he had.
Diggs was towards the top of the list in total targets, but not red zone targets. He didn't make. He was like 12 or 13, surprisingly. I'm gonna go through these because there's a couple of interesting.
I was gonna
ones
guess
here.
Diggs was gonna be my next guess, so I got lucky.
He was,
on that.
dude. Sanj, both times you guessed the guy that I was like, what is he not doing on this list? But that's why we play these games, man. So Calvin Ridley was number 2 in Atlanta with 22 targets, and it's only going to go up this year with no Julio. Adam Thielen, number 3, 20. Tyreek Hill, surprisingly, a ton of red zone targets last year at 19. After Mike Evans was Juju, who is being incredibly disrespected this year. I think he was.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, 7th total in total wide receiver receptions last year, 9 touchdowns last year. It was really the yards that kind of killed, I think, his total fantasy output.
100 receptions, right?
Close. It was like 97.
97,
like that.
yeah.
But yeah, he's going wide receiver 34 right now. So food for thought. Allen Robinson was next on that list, also with 19. DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen. And the last one that I really want to talk about on that list was Russell Gage with 17 targets in the top 10.
Oh, wow.
Again, Julio is gone, replaced with Kyle Pitts, rookie tight end. Maybe he takes all those Julio targets. Maybe he doesn't. They don't really have a run game in the red zone. He's going Russell Gage right now at the back of the 12th round, wide receiver 56. So he's an interesting flyer if you really want to bet on somebody to kind of see another big target share in the red zone. So last and final.
He's a floor flyer to me, not a ceiling flyer, but the looks will be there for sure.
Yep, fair enough. Brandon, any fleeting thoughts on Russell Gage before we move on to our last category?
I would have
here?
said exactly what he just said.
Yep, there you go. Final round here. Brandon already has 2 points, so mathematically I believe he won this contest, but let's do it up. Let's do it up for fun. Quarterbacks who threw 4,000 plus yards in 2019 and 2020.
Oh,
So-
they had to do both. Okay.
Yep, so QBs who have been consistently topping 4,000 yards for 2 years straight. I'm going to, because he kind of already lost on points, I'm going to give the honors to Sanj to take the easy one here. Sanj, start it off. Serve it up. Serve the volleyball.
Patty Mahomes.
Patty Mahomes. He is number 1 on that list. Brandon, who you got?
Oh man, I don't like this one at all. That's tough. Because there's the 2 years has really thrown me off.
I know it's hard to, especially after COVID. 2019 feels like it was 10 years ago.
Oh man. Let me just think about Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson is on that list. Sanj, who do you got for consistent yardage, guys?
Passing yardage. Oh man.
Ball's up
Why
in the
is it
air.
harder
It's
than it should
coming
be?
down. It's going to hit you in the face.
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady is on that list,
Ooh,
number 2.
I wasn't sure if Tom Brady was
Yep,
on it.
I wasn't sure either. That means
That
he
was
did it
risky.
on 2 different teams. All right, Brandon, who you got?
Oh man.
Who comes to mind for yards?
So I don't want to say this because then I would be giving him an option because I'm not going to go with this. But I don't know if Aaron Rodgers actually had 4,000 2 years ago. I don't know why. I feel like he was really close. So I'm going to go with somebody who just throws the ball a ridiculous amount of times, even though he's garbage. I'm going to go with. Oh wait, no, I can't. I was going to say Big Ben, but he got hurt 2 years ago.
He did. Good catch. That's the
oh.
only reason he's not on this list.
Oh man. I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers, I guess. I'll take the risk.
Aaron Rodgers, unfortunately, is on this list. I say unfortunately because I'm a Bears fan and I hate giving him credit for anything on my show. I almost didn't use this category because he's on that list. But Aaron Rodgers somehow every year is consistent and just throws the ball a lot. So, Sanj, who you got, man? There are 3 names left. Wow. You guys got all of the surprising ones, I think. I mean, I'm sorry, the obvious ones.
Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan, yep, he's
Matt
on
Ryan
there.
swings a lot.
He's always the high yardage guy. The touchdowns aren't always there, but every year it feels like he's throwing upwards of like 4,500 yards. So once again, Julio's out of town. Russell Gage, we'll see. All right, we have 2 left. They're both really hard ones.
Okay, well then I'm glad you said that because that means it's Josh Allen is definitely not one of them.
It's not Josh Allen. He took a huge jump last year in yardage from the previous year.
Okay, I'm gonna take a shot at somebody pretty down in everybody's rankings.
Mhm.
I'll go with Derek Carr.
That is one of them. That's
Yes.
a great guess, man. Yep. So, a little context on Derek Carr, who's topping 4,000 yards every year. There are currently no Las Vegas wide receivers being drafted before the 10th round. Some more food for thought. Ruggs is wide receiver 49 right now.
Waller,
At the back of
baby,
the 10th.
third best
Yeah.
player in value. That's
So
Waller.
do we think there's going to be any kind of passing volume shift to the wide receivers this year, Brandon, or is it just going to be Darren Waller again being the benefactor of 4,000 plus passing yards?
I think that the wide receiver targets are going to get more concentrated to a less amount of wide receivers, but I think Darren Waller will keep the same amount of target share.
Love it. Sanj, can you snipe the last one? It's really tough. I will give you a hint and say that he is no longer in the league, but that is all the help I'm giving you.
Drew Brees?
No, that was a great guess, though.
It was Rivers.
I guess, yeah, it was
Was it?
Rivers. I'm guessing Brees probably wasn't on there just because of the games that he missed last year, but if he played a full season, I'm sure he would have been.
True. I forgot he was hurt. Old man River, man.
Old man Rivers, who I heard some rumors that he's thinking of making a great comeback this year. I hope it doesn't happen.
Heard his high school team is doing good, though, so maybe he'll stay there.
He's finding a lot of joy and success in his high school coaching career, and I love that for him. I hope he stays there. Guys, this was fun. Thank you for playing. Brandon is our gold medal Roto Olympics winner for the day. You put that in your Twitter bio and be proud of it. Sanj, dude, thanks for playing with us, man. Get back to work, you slacker.
I appreciate you guys, Greg. This is a great show. Thanks for doing this. I'll see you at our draft next Sunday, huh?
Looking forward
Coming
to
up.
it. Good luck, dude.
Have a good one,
Can't
man.
wait.
Yeah, don't take too much from these shows.
You
You're
too, man.
gonna get too good.
I'm already good. You'll see.
All right, I'm hanging up on you. Bye.
All right, guys, later.
Well, that was fun. Brandon, any takeaways from that? Want to jump back into news or anything you want to circle back on that we just discussed?
Nah, I'm ready to push forward.
All right. Let us actually pivot over to Mailbag. I see we got about 20 minutes left. I want to make sure we get some of these questions in. So we're going to look at some things that were submitted through our website, fantasyfanline.com, in advance by people who could not tune in and call into the show today. The first question comes in from Will in Illinois. Willinois says, do you have any tips for selling a trade offer to your league mate? I love this question. Brandon, what do you think?
I think there's a couple angles you could take. I think it depends on what kind of league you're in, right? If you're in a league with your friends, like people that you know, then you should kind of work off what you know about them. But let's just assume that it's more general, like for everybody, so that the answer can be more helpful to everybody. I would say the best way to probably pull off a trade offer is a lot of people say, you know what, stop talking and just send the trade offer. I disagree with that. I think that if you open up a discussion before you send an offer, it makes it more likely that the other person feels like they have input on the offer you're giving them, instead of just, I feel like there's something weird. Like if somebody gets an offer that they had no input on, right? And you just sent them an offer, they're way less likely to take it because they're going to think something's up, or they're going to think like, you're getting all the credit for the trade because they had nothing to do with it and they just accepted it. So I feel like what I always do is I open up discussion. So I always try to make my trade offers mutually beneficial. I never try to win a trade, because a good trade helps both sides. So I'm usually, if I need a running back, I'm looking at somebody who has plentiful running backs and has one on the bench, and needs like wide receivers if I have good wide receivers or something like that. Or if they need depth, they have one good player and then the rest of their team is trash, I'll give them 3 good players for the one amazing player, So I always kind of just say, hey, I notice blank about your team, and I am looking for this on my team. It looks like we can both help each other. What do you think? Boom. Like, just make it simple, make it easy, make them feel like they have input into the conversation, which they do. And it'll make it a lot easier to come to a conclusion. Usually you'll still end up throwing out an offer. Like they'll say like, okay, like offer me something. But just the fact that you open the dialogue, I think helps a lot. And that's pretty much any trade I make successfully. That's how it starts.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I think I'll add to it. It helps to be prepared for you to be prepared enough to help your trade partner see the benefits of taking the trade. You might be the most researched person in your league. If you're listening to this show, you probably are. So So, come to the table with, like you said, Brandon, with information about here's how this can help you. Here's some great information about this player that you're receiving. Here's, maybe why you want to kind of fill this hole in your roster. Here's what they've got coming up.
It's all about the approach, though. Yeah, you could say that stuff and it'd be really good, or you could say that stuff and sound like a jerk. So you got to be careful the way you say it.
It's part of the pitch, it's part of the salesmanship, and it is your job to sell the trade, not necessarily to do their research for them. So you can kind of show as much of your hand as you want. You can show all the good stats and kind of leave out the glaring things. That is their job to kind of go vet on their end and see if there's any red flags. That's obviously something that you're not going to bring to the pitch for the trade. So, help them see the light, help them understand it, come prepared with research, and be willing to talk, be flexible. Don't get married to your first offer, and pretty much everything that Brandon said. So let's move on to the next question. Is there such a thing as being too active in trades and on waivers? I feel like sometimes I make moves just for the sake of making moves every week, and sometimes they backfire. From Irene in California. Yeah, sometimes they do. Brandon, what do you think?
Absolutely. There's too much tinkering. That's actually one of the problems that we probably deal with a lot, because we just love to try and find like the newest thing, the newest information, and make moves off of it before anybody else finds out about it. So we do so much tinkering and all that stuff. I would say yes, definitely. I love being transparent. That's like one of the things I always try to do. I make plenty of bad trades. Like, everybody makes bad trades. Like, anybody that tells you that they don't make bad trades is lying. Like, you're never going to win every trade. The goal is like to win 2 out of every 3, because that's how you get better, right? I mean, nobody's ever going to be perfect at something. So I'll give one example of something that I did that ended up being a pretty bad trade for myself in a group of a bunch of friends, bunch of work buddies. So I still think I have the best team, so hopefully we'll be fine. But we started a dynasty league. I started a dynasty league this year with all of them. And so it's a super flex. I had Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert as my quarterback 1 and 2. That's how I started my draft.
Not bad.
And, yeah. Well, I don't have either of those people anymore because I've done so much trading. I'm just like, it's like almost like you look at what you first started with and what you have now, even though like a season hasn't been played, and it's like, all right, does my team look better or not? I think overall it does, but there was one trade that bit me. And I traded away Mahomes. All right, give me a second here. I traded away Mahomes for the 101 in the rookie draft and Michael Thomas. The only hole on my team, because after Justin Herbert, I also had Deshaun Watson because of all the questions, right? I got him super late. And then I also got Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold. So I was like killing the quarterback position. So I was like, let me see if I could fill the one hole on my roster, which is wide receiver. So I traded Mahomes away for essentially Trevor Lawrence and Michael Thomas. Then Michael Thomas gets hurt. All this stuff happens about Michael Thomas. And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, who knows? That offensive line is not doing him any favors right now. So I definitely might have lost that trade. We'll see. I mean, if Michael Thomas comes back at the end of the season, because I'll definitely be alive for the playoff run. So if he comes back and ends up being really good, then maybe it'll work out for me. But yeah, that was definitely a case of too much tinkering. I was just too excited to keep trading with all my friends. Like we had like 5 trades a day between like within the league. So you can get too caught up in it for sure.
Well, first of all, it's a great example of why you should never veto trades in your league, because you just never know. Like, even trades that seem lopsided, like that one seems like a good trade on paper, but I'm saying that even if you felt like you were winning that deal, and then, Michael Thomas gets hurt and whatever happens with Trevor Lawrence, we'll see. You can't see the future. Not every trade is going to work out the way you think it does. I liked your answer about the goal is to win every 2 out of 3, right? Like, I would say never make a move just for the sake of making a move, like it says in this question. Only make a move if you feel like it's well researched and you think it makes sense, and you're trusting kind of your own educated guess, right? Like, nobody can see the future, but if you are tipping the scales enough in your favor, if you feel like kind of luck of the draw is 50-50, if you're winning 55% of the time and you make enough moves over the course of a season, that edge adds up and makes your team better by the end of the year. So I would say trust your information. If you feel like you're winning more often than not, you got to throw out the losses and don't be afraid to make moves as long as they feel justified by your information and your kind of intuition. So great question. We will move on to the last one that we have in the mailbag for today. What quarterbacks are you targeting in Superflex but avoiding in one quarterback leagues? From Kenneth in New York. I thought this was a really interesting one. Are there any
Yeah, that's
players
very interesting.
that you feel like fit specifically the need of maybe a QB2 in Superflex, but wouldn't kind of take a swing on as a late one quarterback?
So that's tough. So I think there's what I would be looking for is, and the way I would read this question is consistency versus upside. In a one quarterback league, consistency is useless. In a one quarterback league, like unless it's consistently amazing, right? But there's like one person that's like that, or two people that are like that. So in a one quarterback league, because there's so many options and there's plenty of like consistent guys, you're always looking for upside. In a super flex, there's definitely an attraction to a consistent, stable type of quarterback. So I guess I would give you a good example. And it's funny because I actually do draft this person in one quarterback leagues, but I'll explain why. I think Tua would be a great answer for this, because in Superflex, Tua's probably going to live like Drew Brees did over the last like 3 or 4 years, when Drew Brees was like more that QB 8 to 12, right? That's probably where Tua's going to live this season, because he's got, here, let me pull him up real quick and look at some of the stats I have for him. So he's got one of the easiest schedules. He's got a green schedule, which there's only like 8 quarterbacks in the league that have green schedules. So he's got one of the best schedules in the league. And among all of the top quarterbacks outside of Mahomes and Stafford, he's the only one that has a good schedule. So that's already a plus. Now he's got way better weapons, all this stuff. He's going to be very consistent, I think, as a passer. And I think he's probably going to give you like a good 15 to 22 points every single week, which is super valuable in super flex, because that's always going to be better than your option of starting like a wide receiver or running back in the super flex spot. So that's why I like Tua, and I like his consistency. And he doesn't have the huge upside in a one quarterback league. If you're in a one quarterback league, you want somebody either with legs or with a huge amount of passing volume and efficiency. So like Mahomes gives you the passing volume and the efficiency. Dak Prescott gives you the passing volume for sure, and he's got some rushing touchdown upside. Everybody else, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Ryan Tannehill even, because he pulls 5-6 rushing touchdowns all the time, they all have rushing upside. Well, Tua doesn't fit either of those two categories. So that's why I would kind of avoid him in one quarterback leagues. In general, the reason I find myself taking him is because I love, especially because most of my leagues are really deep, like bench-wise. So I love taking Fields or Lance, because they have the rushing, and they're both good passers, and they're both in decent situations. Trey Lance is in a really good situation, but I think Fields is good enough to make up for the situation gap between him and Lance. So I love taking them, knowing I have the upside waiting on the bench, and then taking Tua, because I'm pretty sure he plays the Bengals week 1, which is probably going to be his best week of the season. He's probably going to have like 27 points.
Yeah, he's licking his chops thinking ahead to that. Oh, I think we just lost connection with our guest. So while we wait for him to dial back in, we have about 10 minutes left. When Brandon gets back online, we are going to take any last callers who come in, and we're going to talk a little bit through some of his favorite targets. I see him dialing back in now. We're going to talk through some of his favorite targets that he highlighted on a recent episode of his show. Brandon is dialing back in. I'm going to take this question off the screen. Just a reminder, if anyone wants to call in and chat with us in our final 7 or 8 minutes here, it is 618 Fanline. That number is 618-326-5463, and you get to talk to me solo for a few minutes until Brandon gets back online. Looks like he's dialing in. We will take this last couple minutes while we wait for him to maybe touch on a piece of news that we missed from earlier, something that we haven't talked about. Oh, New Orleans Saints quarterback Jameis Winston has officially been named the team's starting quarterback for Week 1 against the Green Bay Packers, per Adam Schefter. We can maybe touch on some of the fallout from this with Brandon when he comes back. He is back. Brandon, welcome back to the show. We missed you.
I don't know what happened. It just reloaded for no reason.
It is all good. I brought up this piece of news to kind of touch on in the meantime. I read it to any of our listeners who may be out of the loop, but Jameis Winston is starting Week 1 against the Packers. Do we want to take a really quick look at what that kind of means for Winston, for his weapons, before we move into kind of the final minutes of our show here?
Yeah, so I would say Jameis is probably definitely better for Marquez Callaway. And if you're taking a shot at Traquan Smith, he would be better for Traquan Smith. I don't necessarily think he's better for Kamara because I don't know if he's going to target Kamara as much as Taysom Hill would. I think it's going to be about even. I'm not really moving Kamara based off Winston or Taysom because I think the offense as a whole would be about the same level of talent. But Taysom would steal touchdowns, but give him more targets. Winston would not steal touchdowns from him, but give him less targets and receptions. So I think they're about even. And I loved Adam Troutman, but he didn't get used at all in the preseason, and then he just got hurt, so that kind of sucks. Luckily, he was a late-round target, so anybody that took him and all the places I take him didn't really hurt us at all. But just to go back to that guy's question, I don't want him to feel like he got screwed over.
Got shortchanged, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so outside of Tua, just to give you a couple names, I won't expound upon it, but in 2 quarterback leagues, people that I would be interested in, Baker Mayfield, he's got a good schedule. He would be consistent. Carson Wentz might be a good one. Mac Jones might be a good one for sure. And then probably like a guy like Fitzpatrick because he does give you some upside, but you're not going to draft him in a 1 quarterback league for sure. But you would definitely have interest in a 2 quarterback league. So I would say those guys. And actually, you're going to think this is probably a hot take. I don't know. But Joe Burrow, I'm not touching him in a 1 quarterback league. No way. He got killed based off of the fact that he lost the rushing upside that he had. Not crazy, but I mean, if he loses 4 rushing touchdowns and 250 rushing yards because of screwing up his knees that badly, and the situation's not any better because they decided to draft their 3rd wide receiver instead of a amazing left tackle.
That's a theme on today's show, I think, is drafting unnecessary position players. Look, I'm actually with you on avoiding him in 1 quarterback leagues. I think I'd actually stay away from him in 2 quarterback leagues, maybe as my QB3, but that's not where he's being drafted. People are taking him as a low-end QB1. The vibes on the Bengals offense coming out of preseason are not good. With Jamar Chase's drops and just kind of Burrow's questionable health. I know you're a big Tyler Boyd guy. Is that kind of the only target that you got an eye on positionally?
I like Boyd and Higgins both a lot.
Oh yeah, sure.
I like both a lot, and I don't think there's any problem with Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is I think I have him right about where his ADP is at. I have him at running back 15, but he's literally like very minimally above Dobbins and Montgomery. So, I mean, he's basically where I think he should be in terms of ADP. So he's all right. But Higgins and Tyler Boyd are huge values. I mean, that offense is going to throw top 5 in the league. And they don't throw to the tight end position. They don't throw to the running back position that much. It's their wide receivers are going to dominate. And they lost a whole bunch of wide receiver depth last year. John Ross is gone. I think it's Alex Erickson that's also gone. Giovanni Bernard's gone. Like, there's a whole bunch of like better, decent pieces that have left. So Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins are going to get a whole bunch of targets. Same as Jamar Chase. He just won't get as many.
Sure. Well, we still have a few minutes left here. The lines are going to stay open. If any last-minute callers join us, then great. But if not, we're going to use this opportunity to transition to talk about one of your most recent episodes. I think it was the last one you did was, or maybe the second to last after the mock draft, was your kind of round-by-round favorite targets based on value and ADP. You want to pick a couple of your favorite and just take a few minutes to highlight them here, talk about why you like them, where they're going. We already talked about Travis Kelce earlier with our caller on the line. I know he was one of your big ones in the first round, along with Christian McCaffrey. But who do you like in kind of the 2, 3, 4 rounds?
So I would say, and this is something I said in the podcast too. I always slam running back home in the first few rounds, but it's hard for me to say this one specific running back is my favorite in the round because there's a lot of guys that I like. I love Antonio Gibson. I love, like, in the back of the second. I love Austin Eckler at the 1-2 turn. I love all these guys. But in terms of, like, saying one is my favorite, it's kind of hard. So I actually end up having wide receivers as more of the answer just to that question. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods in round 4 and sometimes round 5 is ridiculous. Yeah. It's actually ridiculous. Like, they are both top 12 wide receivers for me in ranking and projection. And Cooper Kupp already has shown the ceiling to be a top 5 wide receiver. Why would he not be able to do that? How is this
he had
situation?
A stretch not that long ago where he was looking like the guy, like the wide receiver 1 in the league for like half a season.
Absolutely. Like, what's going to stop him from being able to do that again? He's got a better quarterback. The running back situation is worse, so they're going to throw more. He's going to be more likely to get red zone targets because they're not going to run in the red zone. I'm pretty sure Brandon Cooks was there that year that he was great. Brandon Cooks is far better than any third wide receiver that they have.
Yep.
And he should be more efficient because of the quarterback upgrade. So there's really no reason that Cooper Kupp is not going to be a top 12 wide receiver unless Stafford gets hurt or if he gets hurt. Like, barring injury, Cooper Kupp, I would say, is one of the safer bets to be a huge value. And same thing with Robert Woods, because they're going to get very similar target shares. We don't know who Stafford's going to prefer in the red zone. We don't know who he's going to prefer overall. But that's two guys. There's only two guys in that offense that are like for sure going to get involvement. And Stafford has always targeted, if he has a really good wide receiver, he's always targeted him more than he should.
Yep.
And so that's going to be great for Cooper Kupp and for Robert Woods. So those are my guys there at the 4-5 area. And then in the third round, that one's tough. I love Swift super late at in the third. And yeah, I don't know. It's tough. But who did I actually put on the third round sheet? I don't have that sheet pulled up because I told you I always go running back. So
yeah, while you take a peek at that, one of my big takeaways from that episode of your show was how many value picks there are at wide receiver later in the draft, and it was such a strong case, I think, for going running back heavy and not being afraid to kind of, to take an early pick on tight end if that's something that you're usually afraid to do in past years, because that's kind of conditional on who's in the tight end pool to choose from. There are years where there's no clear cut kind of top of the food chain guy, but we haven't had a year like that in recent history because it's been Kelsey for as long as we can kind of remember. But don't be afraid to spend up on a tight end in the first 3 rounds. Don't be afraid to go running back heavy and look for kind of your wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in that like 4 through 6, even 7 range. There are some good guys who could kind of slot in as like a low 2, high 3. Who did you find on your list there?
Yeah, so for the third round, obviously, it was harder for me to think of because I always take running back right there. It's Keenan. If you don't get Kelsey or Waller and you went running back, you double tapped, then in the third round, I don't know why I love that term. If you double tapped running back, then Keenan is a great wide receiver 1. He's like my wide receiver 6 or 7, upside to be the number 1 wide receiver. He's an amazing route runner. Hunter Henry is gone. It's basically him and Mike Williams. Trey McKitty's somebody I love, but he's a rookie tight end. He's not going to do much. Jared Cook is a downgrade from Hunter Henry, in my opinion. And Keenan Allen had like a 30-something. He was like top 3 in target share last year. It was like 30% target share. And there's no reason that shouldn't stay the same. And if he just gets like a minor boost in touchdowns, or Justin Herbert's a little bit more efficient and his efficiency goes up at all, then Keenan Allen could easily be a top 3 wide receiver. And you're getting him probably around, I think his ADP is what, like wide receiver like 9?
I will look
like
that up.
Between 8 and 10.
He is criminally underrated. He's an elite talent, elite playmaker. He's got a great passer, probably better than he's had in recent years.
Definitely.
Yeah, let me take a look at where he's going.
Yeah. So while you look at that, I'll keep talking about Keenan. So basically, he's one of the
9.
Okay, exactly.
Top of the third round.
Exactly, 9. Yeah. So that's great. I love Keenan. So that's my pick for the third round. And if you're still looking at running back, I think Swift is a pretty good option because he's at the 3-4 turn. And so you're not taking him at the top of the third. If you're taking somebody at the top of the third, maybe it would be Waller. I put Waller in my second round because I'm never going to let him get to the third, but he goes in the third often.
Yeah, that's an incredible value. Take us out here with maybe one more from like the 8, 9, 10 round range. Who do you kind of like later on in the draft after everybody's shiny and exciting is gone? Where are you finding your value? Give us 1 or 2 favorites, and we'll call it a day.
All right, I'll give you like 5 names. I'll talk about 1.
Shoot.
All right, so just so people have them.
Write them down. Write them down on your sheet.
Laviska Shenault, Corey Davis, Tyler Boyd, Darnell Mooney, Michael Pittman. I'll say those 5 names. And I'm going to talk about Laviska because everybody hears me talk about Boyd all the time. So I actually have a YouTube video. It's a Dynasty Showdown. It's Laviska Shenault versus Chase Claypool. And I was breaking them both down, talking about why I would rather have Laviska Shenault, which now is not a hot take, but in the beginning of the offseason, everyone disagreed with me. But now all of a sudden people are coming around. Laviska Shenault was number 1 in the rookie class last year. The amazing rookie wide receiver class with somebody that broke the record for receiving yardage in the NFL for a rookie. Laviska was number 1 in contested catch rate. He was top 3. He might have been number 1. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't say that with confidence, but I'm pretty sure he was number 1 in catch rate overall, like true catch rate, when you take out bad passes. Every time that ball touches his hands, he catches it. And every time he catches it, which is every time the ball is sent his way, he gets extra yardage. And he's going to be the number one wide receiver because Marvin Jones and DJ Chark are very similar to each other. They are going to play similar roles in the offense. And Laviska Shenault, now that Travis Etienne is hurt, is absolutely, no doubt in my mind, a lock, a absolute lock if he does not get injured for 120 targets. He's going to get at least 120 in 17 games. He's going to get 8 a game minimum, or 7.5 a game minimum. He's going to be great. And with his rushing utility, getting a carry a game, maybe 2, with Etienne being hurt and them not giving Robinson as much as he's going to compared to last year. So Laviska Shenault is going to be great. The offense is going to be better. I really love him as somebody that could be a top 15 wide receiver upside. And at worst, he's going to be a top 30 wide receiver. And he's being drafted as like wide receiver 30.
I'm not smiling because that's ridiculous. I'm smiling because I love that kind of flag plant on Shenault. Dude, people need to give up on Chark. Not give up, but kind of let go the notion of him being an alpha wide receiver 1 on that team. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we've seen it with our eyeballs over the last couple of years. He had a big season, but he's not going to be the guy who gets the big target share of the 120, 130 targets. Mm-hmm. I don't see it. I don't think the talent's there. I think he's fine. I don't think that he's going to draw a big piece of that pie. I know there's been reports of Marvin Jones leading the pack over there in preseason. It's preseason. Take that with a grain of salt. You know, he's older. He's still a great playmaker. I think he's good for the team. I think he's good for the offense, for the passer. But if you're looking for the high upside guy who could kind of emerge as like the wide receiver 1 there, like the guy, Shenault's your best bet.
Yeah.
I love it.
And he's going in the 8th round. So
yeah,
I'll take that every day. I feel comfortable with him as my wide receiver 2. Like he's my wide receiver 25 in ranking, but I'm definitely not ranking him near his ceiling.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you do not need to take a measure 2 unless you really went heavy on.
Exactly.
And maybe you grabbed a quarterback in the 5th or 6th round. I know that's where you're looking for kind of those high-end quarterbacks. You're Lamar Jackson, who I know you're really high on. Mm-hmm. You're looking for him in the 5th or 6th. So if you start with like Kelsey, grab a high-end quarterback, load up on running backs, you get Shenault as your 2 in the 8th.
That's what I do every year.
There you go.
That's what I do every single year. Wide receiver, I play the wire with the wide receivers. So I get the guys late. I usually hit on a couple of them. And if I still need somebody, then I'll find one on the waiver. Because think about it. If a running back, because people always hit me back with, every year there's like 2 top 12 running backs that came from the waiver wire. Okay. And when they emerge, how many people in the league are bidding on them? Every single person. Yeah. Every single person. And you have to spend all your money and you still don't know if you're going to get him. So wide receivers are way easier to find. When Chark, we were just talking about him. Is it Shark or Chark? I have no idea.
You know, I've been saying Chark. Shark is more fun, so I feel like I want that to be right.
I feel like it actually might be that, though. I don't know. So we'll say Shark. When Shark emerged, he was off the waiver wire. Tyler Boyd's first year. I kept it because I love Tyler Boyd. He's like the main player that I always focus on because he's always a value. He's like the more underrated version of a Robert Woods from the past 3 years. But I have a video of like when Boyd first, I called him as like a sleeper before he was even picked up off waivers. And he was another guy that was off waivers and that year finished inside the top 18 or something. And so like you always find wide receivers late. It's so easy. So easy.
Yeah,
so slam those running backs.
That's where the value is. We will take one more just to give. I see some people tuning in. If anyone wants to call in with a last minute question, feel free to do so. In the meantime, Brandon, if you want to give us one more from your kind of laid out, I know you did like a kind of grouped everything after what, round 14 as sort of a best of the rest. Yeah. Give us one guy from there, and we'll wrap it up.
All right. Oh man, I gotta pick one.
I know it's hard.
I'm gonna go with one. How about this? Go listen to the podcast. I'm going to pick somebody that's not on the podcast because I didn't want to make the podcast too long. All right. I'm going to say Gabriel Davis because he had a stellar yet very unnoticed rookie season. And I think part of the reason it was unnoticed was because there were so many top-end wide receivers in that draft class that everyone was paying attention to. Gabriel Davis was not one of them. He was drafted later than all of these other guys. Yet he was one of the more efficient wide receivers, like among the most efficient. It was like him, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who was also somebody that I loved as a sleeper. But he's with Josh Allen. Emmanuel Sanders is not going to be the wide receiver 2. Like I was actually
I'm so glad
watching-
you brought him up because of the reports coming in from the preseason from beat writers who were like, Sanders is the guy, Sanders is the 2. And all of a sudden, everybody who was beating the drum for Gabe Davis as the second option over there kind of took a step back. And I'm like, no, don't be scared by this. It's preseason.
Exactly.
Sanders is not the player he used to be.
And I was just watching, actually, right before we started, the Bills. It might still be on the Bills game, and Josh Allen went I don't know, maybe 9 passes, all completed before he had his first incompletion. And he was using Emmanuel Sanders a lot. He was. The Diggs was not on the field, but Gabriel Davis was getting used very similarly. Gabriel Davis had a 30-yard touchdown catch from him, and that dude is on the come up. He really is. Yeah. And maybe it won't be this year, maybe it will, but we're talking about super late round flyers. And so you grab Gabe Davis. You see they actually have a good schedule too for wide receivers. You see 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, what is his target share compared to Emmanuel Sanders? And if Gabe Davis is the number 2, you're holding on to him because he could easily emerge with Josh Allen, who lets it rip, is probably going to throw for 4,500 yards. It's got to go to somebody outside of Diggs. They don't throw to the running backs. And they don't throw to Dawson Knox either. It's all wide receivers. Last year it was just spread out really well between Cole Beasley and John Brown and everybody else. But I think this year, who knows what's going to happen with Cole Beasley and that whole situation. I don't like talking about it because I'm not informed enough to talk about it. But with you guys know what I'm talking about. And then
I would say based on kind of preseason trends and just based on the history of veteran wide receivers who are sort of transitioning out of the incumbent role and kind of bringing up new talent, is you'll probably see Sanders start off the year hot and then kind of you'll see that transition to Gabe Davis probably sooner than later, kind of taking over that bigger target role. You saw that with guys like Larry Fitzgerald in their later years. Not that Sanders is Fitzgerald, but he was a good receiver back in his day. Guys like Demaryius Thomas would always come out of the gate swinging once they got older, and then kind of as the weeks went on, especially now in a 17-week season. I mean, even if he starts hot, I don't see it keeping up. Gabe Davis is going to make that jump sooner than later, and if you have him and you're stashing him, you're going to be happy.
Yeah, for sure. So Gabe Davis would definitely be one of them because he's wide receiver. I don't know. ADP is probably 50s, 60s, and he's definitely going to be better than that in my opinion. Yeah,
he's going to whoever wants him at the end of a draft. He's not someone you need to look for. So
exactly.
All right, man. This has been great. Thanks for spending some time with us. We would love to have you back later in the season, maybe once things pick up and we get some more interest, some more callers. I was glad we got one today. That was a good chat. Dude, this has been fun. Plug your show. Tell us where we can find you.
All right. Well, first I want to say that what you're doing is awesome. I love this idea. I think it actually will pick up. I'll definitely help you out. Dude, keep grinding. I think this is a pretty cool idea that people can call in because it's not really something that people have experience with in the fantasy industry. It's not like a radio show, and this is a version of that. So I think that's really cool. I hope you're doing a lot.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. And if you want to check out my stuff, just type in Deep Dive Fantasy Football on any podcast platform. You'll find it. As of right now, it's probably about to lower a little bit. Right now, I've been 3 episodes a week, Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. But I'm probably going to move to 2 a week during the season. We'll see. But so I've got the podcast out, and then I've also got the draft sheets. That's what I really want everyone to look at because the draft sheets is something that I have probably 150 hours of work into, and I'm putting them out there for free. They've got all of last year's stats. Here, let me see. You know what? I'm going to just show it.
Bring it up to a screen. Oh yeah, that's one way to do it.
So it's got all of last year's stats. Let's see what directions. That's the wrong direction. All of last year's stats right here. It's really hard doing this backwards. Then we've got the tiers and the rankings. We've got the players. We've got my projected stats over here. I've got their points for you in standard, half PPR, full PPR, points per game. I've got a risk rating, a potential rating, strength of schedule, value over replacement, consistency, snap share, and it's really hard to see. Snap share. And then I've got some player notes. This particular position I don't have that many player notes for, but I've got all of the different positions. I've got everything for you. It's super nice. So,
even if you guys are watching and you can't see exactly what's on the screen, you can see that it's thorough and detailed and well thought out. And, that is more than you can say for some other sources of information out there these days.
Yeah, I know. Everyone wants to hop on Twitter and look, I'm guilty of it too, but then I explain it in the comments.
Right.
But everyone wants to hop out and say like a one-liner sentence and not explain anything with no context, just to drum up conversation and drum up like likes and stuff.
Dude, I can vouch for you. You do your homework, you know your stuff. I've been a listener for a long time now and a fan of your show, and that's why you're here on my show today. So appreciate you joining us. That is Brandon from Deep Dive Fantasy Football. He is at Deep Dive FF, I believe, on Twitter.
Yes.
Deep Dive Fantasy Football on Instagram. Dude, thanks again. Hope to have you on later in the season. I'm going to take us out here. We are going to be live every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for the rest of the season. Next weekend on September 4th. Oh, God. We are welcoming my pals from the Shall We Football podcast to our show. Heaven help us. They're good dudes. I was on their show a few weeks ago. It was calamity. I'm sure it will be again. You can subscribe and stream Fantasy Fanline live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter, and find us the next day on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on all platforms at Fantasy Fanline. Visit our website for a full schedule of upcoming guests and to submit mailbag questions if you can't join us live. If you like the show, please leave a review, tell a friend, support us at patreon.com/fantasyfanline to earn some perks, and, help us keep the phone lines open and the lights on here. Thanks for tuning in. We will talk to you next time on Fantasy Fanline. Goodbye.